Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another day of Core Set 2020 previews. A lot of cards to look at today. As always, we're going to recap and analyze everything that happened over the last 24 hours or so. If you check out the description below, you'll be able to find the sources of these cards if you're curious as to which content creators premiered which card. It's all down there. Also, if you want to pick up some Core Set 2020 singles or a booster box, they do have them at FlipsideGaming.com, and you can use the Heroes promo code, hopefully save yourself a little cash. That also supports the channel, which is always appreciated. But without any further ado, let's get into it. We got our first look today at the 5 Planeswalker deck Planeswalkers, so we're going to look at them quickly here. I don't want to spend too much time on them. They are not in booster packs, so you won't be playing Draft or Sealed with these cards. They can only be found in the Planeswalker deck that is their corresponding color. They will be the featured card in foil right in the front of the package. Now, they are technically standard legal, but they are purposely designed to really not be competitive. They're truly for more casual players to pick up, maybe if they're trying to learn the game. Casual play, though, you can sit down, play these at the kitchen table. Some of these are also worth thinking about occasionally for a commander or maybe even Oathbreaker decks if you're not looking to do something hyper-competitive. First one is a Johnny Inspiring Leader. Not a lot to say about it. The -3 is pretty good. Exile target creature, its controller gains 2 life. Yeah, for 6 mana, the -3 better be good, but at least it exiles. This one doesn't have super high power level or anything, but at least it calls back to other Magic cards, like the +1 is Shock, the -2 is Chandra's Outrage, the ultimate is the same ultimate from Chandra Nalaar. At least I can kind of appreciate the callbacks here. Mew Yanling, Celestial Wind. Kind of the same as a Johnny. I like the -3. Return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hand. That can be your stuff or your opponent's stuff, depending on what's going on. But again, for 6 mana, that -3 should be pretty decent. Sorin Vampire Lord, that doesn't really interact too much with vampires until you get to the -8. The +2 and -2, I feel like if they did something along with vampires could have been at least interesting for casual play. I realize that the +1 can interact with a vampire, and the power buff is good with lifelink, but it would have been cool if it did something directly related to the tribe. But the way it stands now, I assume maybe the deck isn't very vampire-centric. Although, look at that -8, it has to have some vampires in there for it to be at least relevant. And I kind of like it, even though, yeah, it's going to be really hard to get to, obviously, for loyalty with a +1. But if it ever happened, then you would need to have vampires in play as well. But if that happened, it would make for a fun moment. Vivian, Nature's Avenger. These all kind of look very similar after a while. They all cost 6. That -6 ultimate is a little bit reminiscent of Chandra's ultimate we just saw. Yeah, it doesn't feel like they're doing a lot of new stuff with these, unfortunately. Now, you do need products for new players, so I'm glad they exist. They need to exist, but I'm kind of wondering if maybe Planeswalker decks need to adjust for the fact that we just had War of the Spark, and the mystique around Planeswalkers isn't as strong for new players anymore. When you were a new player before War of the Spark came out, you might never have owned a Planeswalker, you've seen them but never played with them. Now, if you played any War of the Spark at all, you probably own some Planeswalkers. They're not quite as mysterious anymore, I think, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with this product in the future. Let's move on to cards that you will find in your booster pack, starting with Aerial Assault, and this is great for sealed or draft removal if you're in white. Now, granted, you get a little bonus if you have some flyers, but you don't need to be like in Jeskai Flyers to play this, or have Orzhov life gain payoffs. This is going to be strong, limited removal. Not the type of thing you're going to use in standard. It costs 3, destroy target tapped creature, it's a sorcery. But within the confines of Draft or Sealed, this will be phenomenal. This one's a Portuguese language preview, loosely translated, Eternal Isolation. I'm actually pretty impressed with this when it comes to limited removal spells. It's another sorcery. Really surprised that this doesn't cost 3. This feels like a spell that in recent history would have been a white and 2 at least. This time it's a white and 1, so I like that economy. Target creature, power 4 or greater, so it is a narrow removal spell. But it puts it to the bottom of owner's library, which does give you a little more flexibility with certain creatures. So, yeah, again, if you can pick this up and you're in white, you'll be pretty happy with a copy. Saphara Sky's Blade. This is very reminiscent of Avacyn. Pretty cool rare here, actually. A 7/7, it's a legendary creature, angel, has flying, has lifelink. Other creatures you control with flying have indestructible. Now, the casting cost 3 white and 4 is a little expensive, but you may pay 1 white and tap 4 untapped creatures you control with flying, rather than pay the spell's mana cost. So where does this see play? Let's start with Commander. I think it's going to be pretty good there, actually. This is an Angel, so you could just toss it into an Angel deck, or if you want to get more creative, you could build around this as your Commander. It is legendary. Could build an Angel deck, could build just a Flyers deck. There's going to be a lot of creatures outside of Angels that will help you cast this. Things like Lingering Souls, creating Spirit tokens for you, or maybe Battle Screech, making the bird tokens. There's a ton of ways to make this more economical. Oathbreaker players, we just got Sarah, of course, from Modern Horizons. That could be your Planeswalker, and this would fit into that deck. Moving on to the world of Standard, could it see Standard play? Now, normally I would say not with that casting cost, but because it has the alternate option, maybe it's got a shot. I'm thinking about an Afterlife deck, maybe Orzhov colors. If any deck could make this work, that's probably the direction you would need to go. If something like that could get there in a future meta, then maybe this does have a chance. Might be a long shot, but I do think it's not out of the question. Limited, this is a rare, so you won't see it all the time, but it is good, as a rare should be. You could hardcast this in sealed, especially draft for 7, and yeah, that just might be a good play. If you happen to draft like a lot of Jeskai Flyers or something, well, even better, you might have a good chance of cheating it in early, and that could be pretty backbreaking at that point. Also, you might be able to ramp into it if you're in Selesnya colors. It can be a very, very solid high-end creature for you in your curve. Squad Captain, another limited card here, but it's a pretty decent one. 2/2 for 5 does not sound good. It has Vigilance, which is fine, but really, if you're playing Draft or Sealed, you should have a lot of creatures, especially if white's one of your colors. So if this comes in and maybe has 3+1/+1 counters on it, you're getting a 5/5 for 5. Those are pretty good stats generally. Anything over that is just gravy. So yeah, it is very playable. For some reason, if you're being a little more spell-centric or something, then of course skip it. But I think most of the time it's very playable. Commander token, go wide decks might be slightly interested in this too. Cloudkin Seer. Okay, maybe one of the best commons I've ever seen, quite honestly, especially in recent history. I'll cut to the chase and just say, yeah, you probably want to try this one out in Pauper. But how good is this thing? Okay, 3 casting cost, 2/1 flying. Happens to also be Elemental and Wizard, which could be relevant. More on that in a moment. When this enters the battlefield, draw a card. So you're getting a 2/1 flyer for 3 that replaces itself with no drawback. Yeah, that is crazy. This is an extremely high draft pick. Look closely at your common spots, even early in packs, because you might want to grab this thing. It's also splashable. Now, obviously, you might want to go Jeskai Flyers, so people in that archetype might be interested in this if you're drafting. Same with Temur Elemental players. But even if you're not on those plans, this is just an extremely solid card for Draft or Sealed regardless. In Standard, it's not as shockingly good as it is in Limited, but it is a wizard. I might try it out in Mono Blue Tempo, see how it plays. And if we ever get to the point where an Elemental deck is feasible, this could be a part of it too. Commander, here's a card for Inala. Frostlinks, this one is a reprint originally from Magic 2015, also in Iconic Masters and Battle Bond. Always good in Limited. 2/2 for 3. Taps down an opponent's creature not just for the turn that it enters the battlefield, but also for the next turn. You can really push some damage across using this card as a way to keep the path open. Notice too, this is an Elemental, makes sense for Temur Elementals, but even if that is not your plan, this is still an extremely solid card. This even saw a little Standard play last time it was in Standard, which was a while ago now. The format was weaker then. But it is an Elemental, so again, if we get enough pieces, you never know. Moat Piranhas. Okay, here's your top-down design alert for the day. 3/3, Defender for 2. So if your opponent wants to cross the river to get to the Blue Mage, they have to go through the Piranhas. Yeah, this is actually a color-shifted version of Ogre Sentry. Good limited card. Blue wants to gum up the ground. This gums up the ground with an exclamation point. Winged Words, awesome common here. This is going to be phenomenal in Limited. Remember, Divination is a good limited card. This is Divination with maybe the chance that you can play it for 1 cheaper. That's going to be phenomenal for you. You don't need to be in Jeskai Flyers again to want this card. It's going to be great regardless. If you have a flyer, wonderful. If you don't, it's still good. Divination has actually seen some Standard play in the past here or there. Could this see Standard play? Yeah, actually, it just might. And here's my thought. Chart a Course is awesome in Standard. Now, some decks, like the Phoenix decks, they want to get things in the graveyard, like the Phoenix, for example. So Chart a Course has an extra utility for them. However, other decks just might not care about that. And if they're running some flyers, say a Mono Blue Tempo deck, for example, this could be a good option. So I do think it could see a little Standard play, maybe more Standard play post-rotation as things get a little more narrow. Also in Standard, there's God Eternal Kefnet. This card might work well with that one, and that's something you might even see in Commander. This is a Russian language preview, but the parade of good commons continues. This is Audacious Thief, loosely translated. 2/2 for 3. Okay, typically I'm not a big fan of that, but whenever this attacks, draw a card and lose a life. So I don't care about the life loss. I want to draw cards, and that's how you win games. So yeah, I'm going to play this and be extremely happy with it. Granted, later in the game, it might not be as amazing, but I play this, I attack with it. Even if my opponent just blocks and kills it, at least it replaced itself. Nothing amazing, but not bad. This shines, though, if you can get it early enough. Play this on turn 3. Attack. Maybe your opponent will trade because they don't want this thing sticking around. Just replaced itself. That's pretty good. You took a creature off the board and got another card to replace this. Magical Christmas Land, if you can control the board a little bit, maybe back it up with some removal early on, you might draw 2 cards off this, maybe 3 cards. You could steal a game doing that. I do think for that casting cost, it's a little too fragile for Standard, but an awesome card for Drafter Sealed again. Blood Burglar. This is a vampire, but I feel like this one is more for limited. It's good there, though. 2/2 for 2. You know what I'm going to say? It's a bear with upside. I'm on board. As long as it's your turn, this has lifelink? Okay, so if I do attack in, if I can get aggressive, that could be a pretty big point swing. Orzhov colors do have payoffs for gaining life. But again, even if you don't have those payouts, this is still an amazing card. Just play it anyway. Blood for Bones is an uncommon, not a common, but it's still pretty good. This is a way to reanimate something directly from the graveyard to the battlefield, and you also get to take a creature card from the graveyard to your hand at the same time. The cost of a black and 3, and you do have to sacrifice a creature. Couple things to point out here. You could sacrifice a creature, and that could be the creature that you decide to bring back. So if you had a creature with good enters or dies effects on it, like Afterlife is a good example of that maybe, then yeah, you could do that in a pinch. Keep an eye out for those type of opportunities. Now, in Limited, this is a good card because even if you're just playing fair with it, just go ahead, play some creatures, maybe make some loose blocks early where you trade a lot, and then you know this will eventually come up. You're going to be able to get one of those creatures back to the board and one back to your hand at the expense of maybe a small or obsolete creature later on in the game. Now, if you're really lucky, maybe you got something awesome like Vilis Broker of Blood, and if you can get that in your graveyard, you could reanimate that, and that's probably just game at that point. But you can't always hope for stuff like that when it comes to Drafter Sealed, but when it does work out, it's going to feel really good. With that being said, could that happen in Standard? Yeah, I actually think this could be a Standard card because of Vilis Broker of Blood, which we saw yesterday. They gave us a lot of pieces in the last year for a reanimation deck, and it never quite happened. Feels like the set may be giving that deck the push it needed, and it might get there. If it does, this could be in it. Boneclad Necromancer, I don't have a ton to say about this one. It's a good limited card. 5 casting cost. You're going to get 5/5 power toughness on the battlefield most of the time in limited. Unless something weird's going on, you should have a creature in your graveyard at this point. Maybe it doesn't always make your cut at 5. You might have something a little bit better, but it's very, very solid. Murder at common. Yep, they just moved it right down to common. Commons are just getting more and more powerful. Let's talk about this card in limited. Doesn't get much better than this when it comes to removal. Granted, maybe a pain to splash sometimes being double black. Instant speed though, destroy target creature. If you're in a deck that's playing black, you're going to want this. This can be probably first pickable in a lot of packs. Beyond that though, we also found out today that the basic land spot in each pack will have a dual land. More on that in a little bit. So maybe that makes it a little more splashable in this environment. Now this is already standard legal. It was in Magic 2019, of course, as an uncommon there. But it does see a little, just a little bit of standard play today. Could see more post-rotation. It is very solid, but there's just a lot of options out there currently. Noxious Grasp. Wow, okay. 2 casting cost instant, destroy target creature or planeswalker that's green or white, you gain a life. Uncommon, so let's talk limited first. This is a sideboard card for you there. Don't main deck it, but as soon as your opponent is playing any white or green cards, go ahead and bring it in. It will be great for you. The life gain may occasionally interact with some of the other white and black cards we've seen too. Now on to standard. Will this see standard play? Of course it will. Out of sideboards, it hits Teferi, it hits Nissa, it hits Tamiyo. Also, a lot of relevant creatures will die to this. It does not exile, sure, but it is an instant for just 2 mana. Now, the Elder Spell does exist, and this isn't going to replace the Elder Spell. It does something a little more unique. However, the Elder Spell is a sorcery. I think there's room for both of these in a deck. You might want to play a little bit of the Elder Spell and a little bit of this. I think with Fry, Rakdos could be a deck to watch, especially early on in the meta, as people are going to try to prepare to deal with what we've been seeing from the previous meta. I would even say this might have some modern sideboard implications too. Goblin Smuggler, another good common, 2/2 for 3 with haste first off. So remember, even though it is a 2/2 for 3, the haste makes it feel a little more like a 2-drop. And also the ability is quite good, and you can use that ability as soon as you play the card because of the haste. So you might be able to surprise your opponent there. Another target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. Okay, so yeah, these effects are always good and limited. Go ahead and use this on a small creature, attack with it, and then once it gets past the blockers, go ahead and use a combat trick to buff it up. Nothing wrong with that. Also in Standard, Mono Red's going to be looking for replacements post-rotation. This card is going to audition. Can Brawler. This is okay. It's a 2/4 for 4, but it attacks in as a 3/4 because it is an elemental itself. And then it can actually get buffed more on the power side if you have other elementals lurking about. Probably best in Temur Elemental. If you don't have a fair amount of elementals in your deck, you might not run this, but at least it is a defensive card that you could always take out of your sideboard if the need comes up. Cavalier of Thorns, this one is a mythic, it's a German language preview, and of course it is part of that Cavalier cycle. So if you compare this one to some of the others we've seen so far, yeah, you could argue that it's not as exciting. Reach isn't the keyword that green players really want to see, of course that is trample. But, okay, let's get past that. Enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put a land card among them onto the battlefield, so that's good, not tapped, it can be any land. Put the rest in your graveyard, okay, I'm more interested now. When this dies, you may exile it. If you do, you can put another card from your graveyard on top of your library. Okay, so it populates the graveyard, then lets you later on, if this does go away, maybe put one of those cards on top, kind of like a really slow limited tutor in a way. It's that first paragraph, though, there that has me the most excited. I like the idea of being able to search for a land in my top 5 cards. It's never bad. But I really like the fact that those cards go to the graveyard. So let's talk Standard with this first. Could this thing see Standard play? Doesn't feel as good as maybe some of the other Cavaliers, sure. But I do think maybe there could be a Golgari Reanimation deck that could be interested in this. At the end of the day, you gotta remember, this is only costing you 5 mana, 5/6, reach, and all the abilities on top of it. That's good economy. If you can find a role for this, and I do think Golgari Reanimation might be that role, then maybe it gets there. Limited, it's gonna be a bomb, of course. It's a mythic, it should be a bomb. It will be great for you in Draft or Sealed. Leafkin Druid, this is another good common. 2-drop mana dork, tap for a green. If you control 4 or more creatures, it gives you 2 green instead, and that does include itself. 0/3, so it gums up the ground a little bit. Now, Land of War Elves I don't think is going to be in this set. I don't think we're going to see a 1-drop mana dork for a little while. I believe they're just going to let that rotate out and give it some time. So especially post-rotation, I do think this could see Standard play. This will probably see Standard play prior to rotation, even though you do have Land of War Elves, which does do something a little different because it comes in quickly. And you have Paradise Druid, which is a very defensive card. It lets you at least get one shot off with it. This one, it has the extra toughness. That makes up for a little bit, but it could still get burned out quickly. However, if your opponent doesn't deal with this later in the game, this just becomes better, because as you start to add creatures, this kind of scales where you want to be. Maybe you can ramp into something larger quicker. So I do think there are decks that would prefer this over Paradise Druid, or maybe play them in conjunction with each other. This is also an elemental, which could be relevant in the future in Standard, and might be very relevant in limited Temur colors. Regardless, though, in limited, if you can play this, play this. Like I said, it slows down your opponent a little bit with the 0/3, lets you ramp out early, lets you ramp out more later. You know in Sealed or Draft you're going to have a lot of creatures. It won't take too long before you have 4 creatures on the battlefield a lot of the time. This will be phenomenal. This one is a Japanese language preview, Shared Summons, and this is a rare. This is an instant speed tutor. Instant speed for 5, 2 green and 3. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards with different names. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. Okay, so this is kind of absurd. Let's talk Commander first, because this is where I want to play the card. Imagine just going in, taking 2 creatures out that could be combo pieces. For example, you could go into your deck and grab Peregrine Drake and Deadeye Navigator. Yeah. Add instant speed, mind you. So just wait until it's about to be your turn, hold back your mana, then do it. Crazy. This is crazy for Commander. Very, very powerful card. Basically a green staple from this day forward in the format. Standard, could it see play there? I think it might. I do think a card like this would make a ramp deck more consistent. Simic Ramp, Simic Mass Manipulation, might be interested in trying this. Limited is good there too. If you're lucky enough to get this in draft or sealed, it's going to let you just go ahead and grab a couple creatures that maybe you can cast, or you can go look for your big bomb for later in the game. Thicket Crasher, this is an elemental rhino. It gives other elementals you control trample. If you're not on like the Teamer elemental plan in draft or sealed, it's an okay curve filler. Maybe sometimes it doesn't make your cut. You could have better 4-drops, but this is not a bad one. 4/3 for 4 with these abilities is slightly ahead of curve than normal. Nothing insane, but it will be a good creature for you. Many times you'll just attack in with this. It will get a couple points of damage across. It might even trade for 2 creatures and die. But okay, for 4 mana it probably did its job. I don't see it doing a lot outside of limited though. Kethis the Hidden Hand. Okay, this is your Mythic Rare Abzan card. Let's talk limited first, and then we'll talk more about the card in Commander where you're actually going to play it. If you open this up as your Mythic, the abilities aren't going to do a whole lot most likely. I mean, maybe you'll get lucky and it could be relevant at least slightly. But 3 casting cost, 3/4 body, I mean, it's playable if you need something and you happen to be in those colors. But you're not going to be thrilled from a limited point of view if this is your Mythic. Don't really feel this right now in Standard either. There's a lot of legendary spells out there. I mean, Dominaria is still a legal set. But I don't know how consistent you can make something like this. Basically, you would need some kind of legendary deck that has a shell where you could get a lot of those cards into the graveyard. Just feels like if you're going to do that, there's simpler things you could be doing. Just straightforward reanimation. Now, where this card shines is Commander. That's where you want to play this. And I'll tell you, what's cool about this card is it's doing something new. I always like to see Wizards doing new things. Doesn't feel like a card you would see in a Standard set, or a core set for that matter especially. Feels like a card you might see in a Commander Precon deck. With that being said though, I really do want to build a Commander deck around this. Legendary spells will cost 1 less to cast. Notice that is all legendary spells, not just creatures or planeswalkers, but the whole gamut, so that's pretty cool. And the exiling 2 legendary cards from your graveyard to be able to play legendaries out of your graveyard for the turn is very intriguing. Like I mentioned a second ago with Standard, it is incentive to try to maybe mill yourself or get these cards into your graveyard and be able to use them as a resource later on. There's also like a million different directions you could go with this, which is cool. I'm very excited to see what people come up with for sure. Tomebound Lich. Wow, 3 mana for this uncommon? 1/3, Death Touch, Lifelink, enters the battlefield, it loots, deals combat damage to a player, it loots. This is crazy. Alright. In limited, okay, yes, Sultai does care about things entering the battlefield. Sometimes you get some great bonuses. Also, Orzhov colors, so including a lot of black cards, care about lifelink and gaining life. So there's a lot of synergy that you might find, especially in a draft deck around this. But much like many of the cards we've talked about today, if you have no synergies, who cares, because this is still an incredible card. Looting is very powerful. Death Touch on a small creature is going to be very difficult to get around sometimes. The lifelink could come in handy as well for a little bit of a point swing over time. This is nuts. Your opponent's got a tough decision to make. They see this coming at them. Do they lose a good creature to get this off the battlefield? Or do they take the point of damage, let you gain a point of life, and then loot? The loot will eventually kill them. So they can't allow you to keep doing that, which means they probably have to give up something pretty good at some point. Not out of the question for this to see some Standard play either. It's a zombie wizard, so those are relevant creature types. If the next meta or a future meta becomes very creature heavy, this could definitely see some play. Also in Commander and Ala fans, it is a wizard, and zombie fans, it's a zombie. Okay, earlier in the video, I mentioned that the basic land slot will give you dual lands again, and these are them. They are the gain lands. In other words, they come into play tapped, but you get to gain a life. As we go through, you might recognize these from the Khans of Tarkir block. They've been reprinted in other supplemental products as well. Kind of interesting because, like I said a few moments ago, some of the white and black cards actually do have payoffs for gaining life, so these could work well with them. But again, it's not just about that. It is about fixing mana. This is what's going to let you go into those 3-color decks in draft especially. Splash for some extra colors in sealed. It does open up some things. Also, the high devotion cards where you're looking at like 3 white and 3, or 3 black and 2. Like those cards get a little bit easier to cast because these exist as well. So it's very good design in that regard. Don't forget about these when you're drafting. These are important cards to pick up. Now, as for the cards themselves, sometimes cards like this do creep into Standard if people are looking for another option and they're really deep into colors. And we saw that this past season with like Guild Gates and such. So, not out of the question that these will see a little Standard play at some point going forward. For the most part, all of these cards see at least a little bit of pauper play, if not more than a little bit. The first one is Bloodfell Caves, Blossoming Sands, Dismal Backwater. We take a break from the gain lands for a moment to look at Evolving Wilds. You know this card, it's great and limited if you're trying to fix colors, but there's something different this year. This year, this could also show up in your land spot. In addition to the 10 gain lands, this could show up in the same frequency. Another good way to smooth out colors for the limited environment here. This is another card that sees a lot of pauper play. Back to gain lands with Jungle Hollow, Rugged Highlands, Scoured Barrens, Swiftwater Cliffs, Thornwood Falls, Tranquil Cove, and Windscarred Crag. Alright, so that does it for today. Now tomorrow we're going to do our market watch where we look at what's going on as far as card prices in the secondary market. Sunday we're going to come back and do another preview video. We're going to recap everything that occurs on Saturday and Sunday in that video. Monday we have another preview video. Tuesday another preview video. But that will be the last one because then we will see the whole set. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon and have a great day.